According to a survey conducted by the American Psychological Association, millennials at the age of 18 years to 38 years reported the highest levels of stress compared to other age groups, with an average stress level of 5.7 on a scale of 1 to 10. Women tend to report higher levels of stress than men. In the same survey, the women reported an average stress level of 5.2, while men reported an average of 4.5. Chronic stress has been linked to a range of physical and mental health problems, including high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, depression, and anxiety. In women, chronic stress has been shown to increase the risk of infertility, menstrual problems, and pregnancy complications. In general terms, chronic stress can also accelerate the aging process by shortening telomeres, which are protective caps on the ends of our DNA strands. This can lead to a range of age-related health problems. Well, in this video, I will actually explain to you 3 reasons why you are always stressed out all the time, and I am actually going to start right now. The first reason as to why you are always stressed out all the time is because staying busy is your antidepressant. You see, many people are either afraid or unwilling to address the true causes of their suffering and unhappiness. This is partly because it's not always clear. Depression, for instance, has many partial and interactive causes, from genetic vulnerabilities and inflammatory autoimmune responses to ruminative thinking styles and social stressors. So it can be understandably hard to completely understand all the causes and contributors to your suffering. But for many of us, despite this complexity, there are at least some reasonably clear causes of unhappiness that we could work to improve. Well, according to statistics, it is very clear that nearly everyone with depression or anxiety would benefit from more regular exercise. Most people with low self-esteem and self-worth issues would benefit from working to improve their habits of negative self-talk. Almost anyone who struggles to regulate their emotions would benefit from better sleep habits. Many of those who struggle with unresolved grief could benefit from talking to a counselor or therapist, and also nearly everyone with anger issues would benefit from a regular mindfulness practice. The point is that there are usually plenty of reasonable ways to address the underlying causes of our suffering. But the problem is that they're hard. Exercising 5 days a week, month in and month out, can be a challenge, especially if you've got physical or environmental constraints working against you. Changing habitual patterns of negative self-talk takes a ton of work, patience, and self-awareness. And also committing to better sleep habits often requires giving up the pleasures of sleeping in, staying up for just one more episode, or heavy drinking on the weekends. But it's how we respond to these challenges that matter. For many people, the challenges of addressing core causes feels like too much. And so they resort to coping mechanisms and treating the symptoms. Well, as for the socially anxious people, they avoid going out so they don't have to worry about what other people may or may not be thinking about them. For the grief-stricken widower, he opens another bottle of whiskey to numb out the pain. And the guy with anger issues spends an hour and a half venting to buddies about how terrible his boss is, because that's a lot easier than self-reflection. All of these may lead to good feelings in the moment, but ultimately, they're distractions, the opportunity cost of which is less time and energy to devote to the admittedly hard work of addressing the real causes of our suffering. And one of the most common distraction habits we all fall into is trying to keep ourselves busy all the time. And a subtle side effect of constant busyness is actually chronic stress. See, no matter what your struggle is, you probably know that at some level that you need to do the difficult work of addressing the core causes. Which means, in times of stillness and quiet, your mind will be telling you this, sometimes screaming it at you. But if you're afraid to listen and address it, you're simply going to feel even worse about yourself. Consequently, many people who are unhappy are afraid to be alone with their own minds. And so, to avoid the anxiety that comes from being alone with their own thoughts, they create schedules and routines that keep them constantly occupied, stimulated, and busy. Like most distraction techniques, constant busyness works on a superficial level. But it never addresses any of the true causes, and it has some pretty nasty side effects, one of the worst of which is chronic stress. When you're constantly busy, you create a tremendous toll on both your body and your mind. When you don't make time for genuine relaxation, downtime, and stillness, you pay a price. And that price is actually stress. Your brain interprets constant busyness as a low-level form of threat or challenge. If there's always something you have to do, your brain is going to keep you in a state of perpetual low to moderate fight or flight. And among other things, this means a steady stream of stress hormones like cortisol as well as chronic inflammation. Both of which are fine in small doses now and then, but they wreak havoc on our bodies when they're constant. The bottom line is that, if you're chronically stressed out, there's a good chance you're keeping yourself artificially busy as a coping mechanism for some other underlying problem. But it's very possible that the side effects are outweighing the benefits. If you're unsure about it, here's the litmus test. Try being less busy for a while and see what happens. If you find that it's extremely hard and all sorts of painful emotions and thoughts start bubbling to the surface, that's a sign that you're using busyness as a band-aid. The second reason as to why you are always stressed out all the time is that you try to manage your stress instead of your stressors. The biggest myth we all believe about chronic stress is that you need to get better at stress management. But stress management is actually a terrible solution to the problem of chronic stress because you're already stressed. It's like putting a band-aid on a gunshot wound. Of course, some form of band-aid will stop the bleeding, and that is important if you happen to get shot. But band-aids should not be the primary strategy we talk about for dealing with gunshot wounds. We should do our best to avoid getting shot in the first place. See, when we make stress management our first-line strategy, we distract ourselves from really looking at the true cause of our stress. If you're always stressed, the real solution is to fix the original cause of the stress, not the feeling of stress itself. For example, if you're constantly stressed at work, you could try and work on doing more deep breathing exercises throughout your day. And maybe your stress level will decrease a little. But there is no amount of deep breathing exercises will change the fact that you're still terrible at saying no to taking on too much work. Feeling stressed at work is the messenger, trying to tell you that something about how you work is deeply wrong. Over-reliance on stress management techniques is effectively shooting the messenger. Stress isn't the problem. It's the constant stream of stressors in your life and your unwillingness to manage them that's the actual problem. There's nothing wrong with stress management techniques like deep breathing or mindfulness. The problem arises when you get into the habit of thinking about chronic stress only in terms of how you feel, your stress response. The far most important part of the equation is the stressors that are causing the stress in the first place. Learn to manage your stressors, and your stress will largely take care of itself. The third reason as to why you stressed out all the time is actually because you lack assertiveness. Assertiveness may be the most underrated idea in all of mental health and well-being. Not the least of which, because it's one of the best weapons we have against chronic stress. Assertiveness means clarifying and pursuing your values. We are assertive when we take the time to distinguish passing whims and desires from meaningful goals and aspirations, and then make the decision to pursue what really matters, even if it's at the expense of what feels good or comfortable in the moment. Assertiveness is the willingness to make decisions based on your values rather than your feelings. And this matters a tremendous amount when it comes to chronic stress. Assertiveness is a double antidote to chronic stress. Not only does it help shield and buffer you from the stress you already have, but it also gives you strength and resilience to avoid unnecessary stress in the first place. When you have the courage and strength to make decisions that move you closer to your values rather than running away from your fears, you're in a far better position to avoid chronic stress. Well, my beloved ones, we have actually come up to the end of the video. But before I go, I would like to remind you to subscribe to my channel if you are interested in topics such as entrepreneurship, sales and marketing, business, motivation and life skills. If you found this video helpful, then don't forget to show your gratitude by clicking the like button and share the link of the video to other people so that they can benefit as well. Also, go ahead and check other educative videos that are available in my channel. As for now, goodbye.